Thank you for the opportunity to be here again. I'm again Craig Jones with Dennis Myers, the Architects, and we were hired in summer of 2017 for an assessment and a conceptual design for the Hampstead Central School. So that's where we started in this process. The first thing that we do is we look at existing conditions. It's an assessment, and we're planning for the future. We're looking for tomorrow. We're looking at tomorrow. And it's interesting, when we think of tomorrow, my in-laws have two great ways that they use tomorrow. They say mañana. They're saying mañana, let's do it tomorrow, or let's put it off till tomorrow. So obviously what we want to do is we want to be looking forward to tomorrow. We want to be doing what is impactful for tomorrow in a positive way. So with the existing conditions report, we looked at four major categories as we went through the building, looking at deficiencies and other upgrades that needed to be done. And they fell into the categories of safety and security, into code upgrades, into building efficiency, and space deficiencies. And I'll kind of go through a few of these areas just to give you an idea. There's a much larger report, but I think it speaks to the whole as we look through these. In terms of safety and security, the exterior of the building has at least 10 access points. These are areas that need to be secured for today's way that schools are vulnerable. So this is one of the areas that we looked at, is all of these access points around the building. Again, with the access, this is one area. At the very front of the building, we have the main entry that has the office on the upper level. And it's really difficult for visitors to get into the building, and it's very difficult for any of the staff to allow the visitors into the building in a manageable way. So this is one of the areas that we identified that needed better access control. A second area that we looked at was building requirements and building code requirements. And when we're talking about building code requirements, we're primarily talking about fire safety and life safety. So building code is, for the most part, looking at how do you protect the occupants in the building, and these are a number of the deficiencies that we found, as well as use of the building for bathrooms and that type of thing. So there are non-compliant railings that are just safety as you're walking through the building. There's one non-compliant stair in the 60s wing that doesn't have wide enough egress access. If a fireman was to have to carry a child out of that building, it isn't figured up to today's code standards. There are more restrooms that are required throughout the building, and drinking fountains, and then of course the big one that we've all noticed is that the fire sprinklers have not ever been installed. And you know, new buildings today are required to have fire sprinklers. Fire sprinklers have just never been installed in the Hampstead Central School, and that's one that would fall under that code category. The next area is building efficiency. And when we looked at building efficiency, for the most part, the building is in pretty good shape, except for any part of the 60s wing. The 60s wing was built with uninsulated masonry block, which means that in the summertime, when it's 90 degrees outside, it's pretty close to that inside. In fact, it can get hotter inside than it does outside with extra body temperature. In the wintertime, like we're experiencing now, if the outside face of the wall is at 0 degrees, the inside face of the wall is, you know, close to 20 degrees. And that's just not acceptable for any type of an education environment. It's really hard on learning. And so it's not just the masonry walls, it's also the windows, it's the roofs. They're not insulated to the proper value, and the roofs are in need of replacement as well. There's also fresh air intakes on the 60s wing that it's right where the drop-off is for the kids. So any of the fumes that are being exhausted from the vehicles, that's being sucked right into the school classroom. So the heating and ventilation system is something that also needs to be upgraded. The next category was the space deficiencies, and space deficiencies we're looking at what the state standards are and what the school has set for its own target. So preschool has targeted 15 students per grade or per class per room. Kindergarten, 18 students, and grades 1 through 4, we want to be able to have 20 to 23 students per class. And the way it's set up currently, that's not possible in all rooms. I'll point you to these 3 undersized classrooms that are in an older section of the building. It's in the 40s wing. They are about 300 square feet below the standard, so you know, quite a bit smaller. They shouldn't be cramming or shouldn't be putting as many students into those classrooms. It's not a safety violation, but it certainly is standards that are not being met for today's educational needs. There are also some formerly closets that are being used for instructional space for special education. We don't think that that's appropriate for any student. So that's one of the deficiencies that we earmarked as well. Then finally, on the exterior of the building, there are also some site improvements that could be made. That kind of a cramped area where the drop-off and pickup are located. There are some pretty easy moves to make that a better space, and again, that was one of the deficiencies that we noticed. So in terms of process, as we've looked at this, we had to recognize that we were not the first that looked at this. This has been going on for years and years. In fact, the portables were brought in as classrooms over 20 years ago. Formally, a process to design and come up with a new building were started over 10 years ago. So this process has been going on and on through numerous studies, numerous facility assessments, the steering committees. Your school board has been working hard on that over a long, long time. And it always reminds me that when you're told that I'm doing something for your good, that's usually kind of a bad connotation. You say, I'm going to do something for your good. It isn't taken the right way. But I think we need to keep in mind that this is for the entire community's good, and there are also personal benefits as well. So just recognize that the community and the school board have been working on this together for over a decade, and they're trying to improve the educational needs of this community. We'll jump into the conceptual design, and this is where we get to continue with the tomorrows of not put it off till tomorrow, but this is a conceptual design of this is how we are planning for the future, for the tomorrow. I want to orient you just a little bit. The existing building consists of essentially 3 building programs. There's the 40s wing, there's a 60s wing, which is all this white roof area, and then an 80s addition, which is the rest of the school and gymnasium. And then you can also see where the portables have been on site. One of these portables have now been removed, and we're going to continue to remove those. And through that process, that meant that music was moved into the school. They're back on the stage. It just wasn't safe to have the students going between the school and the portables multiple times a day, and there were no restroom facilities in those portables either. In the new plan, you can see we still have all of the existing building components, and then we're proposing that there'll be site improvements, a new library, a music room, and there's a bank of restrooms in here as well. There'll be a cafeteria and community room. There'll be a courtyard space that's kind of an interior protected space. And then the main entry, which is more of a safety concern, but that gives the administration an eye on the front of the building. Looking at the renovated areas, I'm going to just point out some of the big ones that we would be addressing, and that would be turning the library into 2 classrooms. They originally were built to be able to be 2 classrooms. We'll turn those back into 2 third-grade classrooms. The 3 small rooms that were in the 40s wing, that would be divided into 2 right-sized classrooms. And so they can either be 2 classrooms or they can be classrooms and a special education space to take the burden off of those closets in the lower level. There'll be expansion of the restrooms, and then this whole 60s wing, this is where we don't have any good insulation on the exterior of the building. That would get a completely new skin, which includes a fully exterior insulation and siding package with windows and roof with insulation, and then there'll be heating and ventilation installed as well. In terms of new construction then, any of these areas over here are new construction. And then the colored areas down here are some more of the renovations. I guess here we have the new administration area, and I'll go through this just a little bit in a little bit more detail. The cafeteria, which backs up to the gymnasium and to the existing kitchen, so that the kitchen can be reused. We don't need to build a new kitchen. It can just kind of mirror itself and be able to serve a new cafeteria space for the community and for the students. Then a music room, restrooms, and a new library space with some more external, a wide hallway that becomes another teachable area that they can teach within the hallways and hang up. It's like being able to have an extra lobby. And then above the kitchen, there'll be 2 new classrooms with some more circulation. We'll look at the administrative area. The new administration area would be added to the front of the building. It's this box here. In plan, you can see now we have 1 point of entry. Before you had to come in an entry down here and up the stairs and into the main offices. The main offices currently can be converted into district offices, and the administrative area is added on. Anything that's orange out here gives complete control at the front entry of the building, so they can see what's happening where the buses pull up, where parents enter, and what goes on behind them in these hallways as a transition space between the school and the gymnasium. In the back of the building, we have the new cafeteria and music room and library and classrooms above. And again, in plan, here's that cafeteria that currently the kitchen is in that location there. It will be mirrored so that the cafeteria can be served off the back side of that. There's an extra entry in here that can be opened after hours for the community to use. It would have its own separate entrance. The music room and the library would be making up the rest of that building area. And then of course there's an interior courtyard space as well. Then you can see the overall circulation. There's kind of a nice big circular pattern, and there's great access out to the drop-off, access to the playground, and then access to the main entry, or from the main entry. And this is the new rear drop-off that's in the same location that they're currently using, but now we have the new skin on the 60s building that's insulated and energy efficient, and there's a little bit of site work that would take place back here to make that a little bit more, a little bit easier to use in the back. So when we look at doing any kind of a building project, it's nice to see what the categories are, where the money is going, where the effort is going. And you can see that some of it obviously has to go to the remodel and code deficiencies, some site infrastructure, the district-wide solutions, which we can accommodate all of the district IT in the building. And we have some safety, a decent chunk with safety and security. But really, the bulk of the improvements are to learning environments, and that's really what the school's about. So we're happy that it's able to occur that way, because sometimes all the money has to go just to make the code upgrades. And we actually get a nice chunk that goes into the learning environments. So when we look at the numbers, we have the wrong slide here, but it's the right slide. It just it moves some things around here. I'll interpret it for you, so I apologize. So we have hard costs, which are basically all the construction costs, which is $6.9 million. We have soft costs of $750,000, which are the architectural and engineering fees, management fees, some commissioning just to make sure all of the equipment is working properly, and then a contingency, which covers any unforeseen conditions, or maybe there's some money left over at the end to do other things, but it typically covers things that can't be foreseen in the initial design. And that gets us to a number of just under $8 million. It's nice to know what the impact is going to be, and I think we'll talk further about this, but if you look at a typical home of $200,000, it works out to just about $12 a month. If you own a $200,000 home, that's what the impact is going to be on you as the tax owner. And we have all of these numbers, and we could probably calculate more. If you have any questions about how much this might impact your taxes, then just ask somebody. Ask one of us, or get a hold of the school board, and we can get that information for you.
Okay.
That's the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones.